like to welcome Winslow Townson. You're in the Boston area, correct?
That is correct. I've been here actually my whole career, yeah.
Have you really?
Yeah,
and
that's actually one of the things that's worked in my favor, I have to say, is my location. Because we've had a string of really good teams for decades now. And, I mean, that's obviously just luck, but it's worked in my favor.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, championship teams like crazy, so that's got to be a little bit of fun where you don't have to go looking elsewhere for the work.
Yeah, but I'll be honest with you, sometimes there's been so many playoffs, especially in the early part of this century, that a lot of us are like, God, I hope the Red Sox don't make it this year because we just want to fall off, or stuff like that. I mean, it's really kind of a spoiled attitude, but that's the way it's just been around here, you know?
Yeah. So tell me, we met at the Olympics, correct? In Sochi?
Yes, that's right.
We both did hockey. That's when we met, so 2014. I actually saw in Boston, when we won the Cup Game 7, I was looking for pictures for somebody, and I found there was a picture, and you're right there in the background taking a picture of, whoever had the cup at the moment.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, we did those Olympics together, and that's and we both love hockey, but that's like... That's like hockey overload because you're doing the men and the women and you're just shooting hockey all day. And as much as I and you love hockey, it's a lot of hockey,
Oh, yeah. Bruce, talking to Bruce Bennett yesterday about that, and he's like, yeah, people just don't understand it. And I think when I counted back, I think I did something like 20 or 21 games in like 14 days. Because a lot of times we had those 3 games a day.
Yeah, right.
And, and I tell young people that are asking about, this kind of stuff, I'm like, you know how you feel after you shoot a game? You're kind of worn out a little bit. You're concentrating the whole time. In between periods, you're trying to get images out. And when the game's over, it's like, you take a breath and kind of try to relax. Well, imagine an hour or so later, you're doing it again for another 2.5 hours or so.
Right. And a lot of times these places don't have decent places to eat or really work sometimes. And you just, it's a grind. It's a grind to do it for a couple of weeks, and then your last game ends at, 10 or something. And then everybody's hungry. So you got to find a place to eat, And that Olympics, it was like I lived on that McDonald's. It was the only thing that was open.
Right. Same.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah, totally. My last day, I actually took a picture with everybody that was working there. I just did a selfie with all of them in the background, all the servers, helpers, whatever.
Yeah.
Have you done any other Olympics?
That was the only one I've done. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I've done it, and I'm glad I've done it, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a young man's sport because it's a grind. The one we did, we were lucky that the transportation was easy, efficient. Everything was in one spot. Right. Even though there were several rinks, it was all together. Some of these are just travel nightmares and dangerous. Ours wasn't that dangerous. I did the World Cup in Brazil once, and I traveled all around doing different games. It was dangerous. It's a third world type country that you got to watch your stuff. You got to be careful where you go. You got to be careful, not to leave your stuff out or have it around your neck if you don't have to have it around your neck.
Right.
And just stuff like that. And the language barrier there too was hard.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was dangerous, Right. So a lot of these places aren't the safest, because all those big events, they bring in all the criminals,
Yeah.
People
I think you're right. You nailed it when you said how we were more safe in Russia because it was like a complex area. I mean, like the gate, gated, and you couldn't really just go out and just walk the streets outside of the Olympic area.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. My room was horrible, but how was your room there?
It was fine. I can't believe we never talked about it then, but we were too busy shooting hockey.
Right.
But it's funny because I was traveling with somebody, and we got delayed because of a snowstorm in New York. And so we got in late, and it's like 1 a.m. or so. We're trying to check in to get our room, and the guy's like, your room's not ready. I'm like, dude, I was actually supposed to be here 2 days ago. So if my room's not ready now, what's going on? And then I find out it wasn't ready because they hadn't put the TV in yet. I'm like, I just want to go to sleep. I'm not worried about a TV.
Right.
I actually had like a second little room and then a balcony. So I had plenty of space and everything was really kind of wild. Bathroom was fine. So I luckily didn't have any issues. I mean, hearing so many stories about people that did have issues.
Yeah, I had the same thing. They said, "Okay, your room's not ready," and I'm like you. I just want to go to sleep. And they finally let me to my room, and there was no curtains or shades for the window.
Same. Okay, curtain for me for the shower. It was curtain for the shower.
There was no curtain for the shower.
Yeah.
Did you have a curtain for your shower?
No, that's the only thing I was missing, really.
Yeah, and luckily I brought a bunch of black trash bags, and I used them to seal up, to darken my room,
Right.
and I used them as a shower curtain too.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I was like, they don't have a shower curtain. I don't care if the floor gets wet. That's on them.
Yeah, duct tape and trash bags. I had to put my
There you
room
go.
together before I could live there.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So do me a favor. Tell me about your journey into photography.
It was very unspectacular, kind of. I mean, I grew up taking pictures. I went to college for communications with a minor in photography, and I actually worked at a TV station when I got out of college. And I just didn't like it, the grind and the 9 to 5. And so one of my professors at college knew someone in the photography business, and it was a wire photographer. It was an editor, actually. And so he hooked me up with that guy, and I had to like go out and take pictures on my own and bring them in. And then when I finally had one after weeks of doing this, he's like, "Okay, yeah, you got a picture. Here's one roll of film. Now go out and get another picture." So that's, it was like that. And then, so I did that. And then when I got my first game, it was like a Celtics game. And he's like, "Okay, here's 2 rolls of film for your Celtics game." And I'm like, okay, to me that was fine,
Right.
But
right.
thinking back on it, 2 rolls of film is like, 70 pictures.
Right.
And you just like, it's like the in-camera editing you do, because you don't want to waste anything,
Right.
So it really, it was
funny.
interesting anyway. So I started that way. It was someone that I knew, basically that got me into it, which it is for a lot of people in a lot of businesses,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring up the single roll. I think my first professional hockey game, my first Blues game, I want to say like 84, 85, somewhere in there, is it was for the UPI staffer here in town at the time, and Art Phillips was his name, great old guy, and he would give me a couple rolls, and I would come back to him. I guess it was either after the second period. I'm thinking that he wanted to process them and get them out, and I got the 2 rolls in my hand, and he goes, "Give me your best one."
Your best roll?
Yes, I'm like,
Of the 2?
yeah. I'm like, I don't know.
Let me see.
This one, this one, yeah.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Right. I made some pictures, I guess, because I kept going, I kept working. So,
Yeah,
but
right.
that always cracked me up.
That's
Did you
funny,
know?
but
Like,
what?
go ahead.
We had a good experience with that, and I think about this a lot because it's so different today than when we started. Because I'm like you, I had to bring film into an office. Okay, I had to develop the film, and then I handed the film once it was dried to an editor, who looked through it and said, "Oh, you." In my first basketball game, he said, "You shot the whole thing horizontal. What the hell is wrong with you? It's a vertical sport," And
Wow.
And back then, newspapers wanted vertical pictures because it wouldn't use, 6-column pictures were unheard of, And so that was my very first game. And see, I learned stuff from the editor. He'd be like, "Don't shoot it like this," or "Try this," or, and I feel sorry because kids these days don't have a lot of that unless another photographer kind of mentors them when they're starting.
Exactly.
But we had these editors who would look at our film, tell us it was terrible, or tell us, "Yep, there's a picture. Oh, in the corner here, here's a picture,"
Right.
and show us, basically what is a picture, what isn't, what we were doing wrong. And this was on a daily basis,
I've had that same conversation with a couple other people I've spoken with, and that is, it's huge. It's these kids, not only do they not have that editor kind of helping them learn, but because of social media, they have friends, family, other people saying, "Oh my God, that's such a great shot." And it might not be, to the seasoned professional. It might be just a decent shot. And they keep getting told how great their images are, and they should be shooting for a team or should be shooting for, a magazine or this or that. And they've never dealt with an editor telling them, no, I'm not going to use this picture.
Right. And why not? And why they're not going to use it,
Exactly.
And I've given some advice. I'm tentative on giving people advice because some people are receptive to it and some people aren't receptive to it. So unless I know them really well, I'm probably not going to, interject too much. Like right around 1990, I went to a sports photography workshop in Colorado Springs. Yep. It was, who's the NCAA
Clarkson?
guy?
Was it Clarkson?
Yeah, it was Clarkson, right.
Rich Clarkson Associates.
Yeah, and there was a whole bunch of SI guys, including Heinz Klutmeyer, who was director of photography at SI at that time. And we all went out and shot for a whole day. And then we went through the stuff with our instructors, and they put a slideshow together of all of our best images from the day before. And Heinz would critique them. Right. We go through them one at a time. And there must have been like 300 images, okay? Because it was a whole classroom full of people, And you give five of your best images. And he went through 300 images and liked one of them. That was it, one. He ripped them apart, for backgrounds, for angles, for lighting, it was a real wake-up call that you think you're good, but here's a seasoned pro telling you you're not that good yet,
Exactly. And that's what these young kids are missing out on. I have an assistant at hockey, and I think the fact that we will go over some images here and there and say, well, I know why you picked this one, but here's what I think would look better, whether it's a crop or horizontal line off or something like that. And so I don't mind helping because it's somebody that's helping me out. But yeah, I see stuff in, whether it's the local newspaper or website or whatever, from people around me shooting at a game, whether it's baseball or hockey. And there's so many times, like I would like to say to them, why'd you use this picture? What do you see in this? But I'm not going to do that. And I feel like, is that hurting our industry? Is it not helping them learn and grow because they don't have somebody giving them any feedback?
Yeah, I know. That's the dilemma, and not that we're always right, but we could give them, at least get them to think about it. Maybe I look through images, and I think that's part of what every photographer should do, is always be looking at images, other people's images.
Right.
We've seen a lot of like baseball that's all backs and there's no faces in it, and just pictures that just don't mean anything. And they're putting them out there. And I'm like, you know what? If you put crap out there, it will get used. And it's got your name on it. So be careful what you put out there,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a perfect example, I've always told kids that ask me to look at their portfolio, I just say, send me 10 of your best images. I can get a feel for what you do. And, the frequent one you'll see is like a double play from third base. That might be the guy sliding in total back, and then it's kind of the follow through throw. The guy's arm might be in front of his face. And I'm like, hey, your timing here, that tells me something because your timing was good. But I wouldn't move this picture because I'm not seeing any faces. And it just happened to be you were on that side of the field for this shot. If you're on the other side, you see faces, then that shot might get used somewhere. But unfortunately, like you said, it is getting used out there, and they're not learning from it.
Right. Yeah. And, that's part of the thing, is that you have to realize that when you're shooting sports, that you're in a spot for a play. Now, like in football, you can move around, but in baseball, you're in the pits, and sometimes it's just not your picture. And it may be a great picture, but it's going the other way. And you just have to say to yourself, okay, that's somebody else's picture. In football, when you're working with other people, you'll be like, okay, that's that guy's picture. It was on that side. It was going that way.
Right.
You just got to bite the bullet and say, I have it, but it's all backs. and it's not good, and just say,
Exactly.
okay, I'm not going to use it,
Right.
And
Definitely.
I think that's hard for people to say, it wasn't my picture,
Right. Yep.
It's funny you mentioned second base because there was a summer, it was a while ago, when we were all so sick of moving second base pictures that we decided to see how many games in a row we could go without moving a second base picture. Hey. And we went game after game. I'm not moving that one. I'm not moving that one, And it was funny. We started about halfway through the season, and we actually went the rest of the season without moving a second base picture.
That's hilarious. That'd be funny.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've done that. A couple of us have done that with certain players. If a player is kind of like a jerk to us or just has that kind of an attitude, it's like, I'm not moving a picture of him. Even if I have a decent shot of him, I'm not giving him any love. It's just like, that's the little bitty bit of power we yield.
Right,
Is,
exactly.
People aren't going to see that shot of him. Oh, go ahead.
One of my editors, when I started, when they were going through the film, yelling at me and telling me what I was doing wrong, he would say, people want to see faces. They want to see a face. They want to look at people's faces. That's what people want to see. And that was one of the first things I learned is you got to have a face in the picture. And if you're doing a pan or something photo, the face has got to be sharp, okay? You can't have everything be out of focus. There's nothing to look at,
Right.
And I think that's another thing that happens these days is that people go for the artsy, well-lit, beautiful-looking pictures with silhouettes and beautiful skies and nice light. And those are great pictures, and you should shoot them, definitely.
Right.
But those are never the pictures that get used. Never.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Totally agree.
They want the bread and butter. They want the storytellers. They want the star of the game, And it's nice to have those in the can, but it's just not the one, it's not what gets used,
Yeah, I'd say get creative and do that kind of stuff after you've gotten the starting pitcher, somebody knocks in a run, the RBI, the guy scoring, the high fives, whatever. Get the meat and potato stuff. And once you have some of that stuff telling story of the game, then do some pan blurs and some creative stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so you notice that stuff never gets used, right?
I know. Yeah, exactly.
It's too bad because they're nice pictures, and we all love to do those kind of pictures, but...
Exactly. And you might just see it on social. That person might put it out on social. So it's the only way it gets seen, Are there any particular subjects or themes you enjoy capturing, one sport more than the other?
Well, hockey's always been my favorite just because I played hockey, and I love freezing moments that are so fast that you can't see them with your eye, even on TV. But if you freeze it, you can look at, the puck was on an angle here, or it was sitting right on the top of his pad, or, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah.
It's just a fast game that I love to freeze and look at particular moments, A lot of people are intimidated by hockey because it's so fast, and, and a lot of what we do in sports, it's anticipation. And if you know the game, you know where it's going to happen next, or you can see the centerman curling out of the defensive zone, looking for a pass in the center of the ice, and you're on him before he gets the puck.
Right.
Stuff like that. It's a batter likes to pull the ball against left-handed pitchers, so you're on the third baseman because he's more than likely going to pull it that way. I mean, stuff like that it's the anticipation of stuff.
I mean, it's almost like I'm hearing an echo from what I say to people. Know the game. It really is. I always say that, and it's funny how what you use. I don't use the hockey one, but I use the baseball one. If there's a guy on second base with 0 outs or 1 outs, the next hitter wants to advance him, so he might be trying to go the other way, depending on the pitcher. So I might be looking at that side of the field, or just knowing that I'm going to have to worry about just maybe his follow through or something because I'm not going to get any face. It's one of those things that definitely I always try to preach is knowing the game. If you understand and know the game, you will be a better sports photographer.
That's true.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I agree with you totally on that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So do you have?
Sorry,
do you?
I had to.
Oh, it's great. And I'm going to leave that one in there. Could you share a memorable experience or a story from your career that really kind of has a lasting impact on you?
I mean,
You have so many championship stuff.
so many, so many.
Yeah.
But probably the one I talk about when I give lectures and talks at schools and stuff is the Boston Marathon bombing. Probably because
Wow.
that was a day where I was on staff for the Associated Press at that time, and I was shooting the Red Sox game. It's Patriots Day, which is only a Massachusetts holiday. It's kind of hokey, but the Red Sox start at 11 a.m. that day, and the marathon starts, and everything's going on at the same time. I was shooting the Red Sox, and we heard all these sirens going off, and we're like, God, what's a big fire or something? And then I get a call from my photo editor, the AP photo editor in Boston. He says, forget about the Red Sox. You need to get down to the marathon finish line right away. So I'm like, okay. And I go down there. He didn't tell me anything about what had happened. He's like, call me when you get in your car. So I called him and he said, look, they're going to shut off all the cell phones. So you just need to listen to me. This is what's happened. This is what I know. And just see what you can do. And, AP already had 2 people assigned to the finish line of the marathon. Unfortunately, they were both transmitting in a hotel nearby. And when the bombs went off, the police shut down that whole area. So they couldn't really get back to the finish line. They got to where they could shoot people being evacuated from the finish line. But then that was okay because really the pictures at the finish line were so graphic and gory, you couldn't use them anyway. John Tomacki, the Boston Globe photographer who made the picture of that event of a runner down with cops pulling their guns around him. It was the cover of SI that week. He won't even show anybody the pictures he's made that day because they're so graphic. And he's become close with some of the people because he's done their stories, their recovery stories. Right. So he just won't even show them, or none of them got used. And, they're just too graphic. So anyway, I got down there and a cop's like, this whole area is shut off. You can't go in there. So I showed him my tags and he's like, okay, you can go in there. But they're using cell phones to set off the bombs, and the bombs are in trash cans. So, and he said, this is why all the cell phone service has been shut off in the area. All that proved to be wrong, but it was what the police had at that particular moment, Right. So I was staying away from trash cans. I was pretty much looking for people that had already finished, people that were stopped on the race course before the finish line, people being reunited with family afterwards. It was all these peripheral stuff, not the, main stuff at the finish line, which needed to be covered, of course.
Of course.
But
yeah.
I'm like, you look at every trash can differently. And I saw this whole row of Porta-Johns, and I'm like, I'm not going near that row of Porta-Johns,
Wow.
It's funny because when, I don't, in my opinion, no picture is worth losing your life over. So I was, cautiously walking around that place.
Oh, I bet.
All that information proved to be wrong. They weren't in trash cans. They were in backpacks,
Right.
They weren't being set off by cell phones. They were being set off by timers. So, but it was just the chaos of the moment, how that's what we had to go on, So, right. And that was something I'll never forget, really, that whole day, And the days that followed, for that matter,
Oh, I bet. I mean, that was, it took a while to get everything.
Yeah, I mean, there was a Globe photographer on the bridge over the finish line who had shrapnel in the back of his laptop from the bomb going off. Because one went off right near the finish line, right. And one went off up the street a few blocks away from the finish line. And yeah, he had shrapnel in his laptop after the bomb went off. So,
That's
it was
scary.
Yeah, it was a different kind of day.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you call yourself more of a sports photographer? Because that's more what you cover.
Yes, I'd say now I'm pretty much solely a sports photographer. When I started out, I was a news photographer covering politics and just general news around New England. but
Right.
there's sports is such big news around here that it morphed into kind of sports. Eventually, over the long run, I mean, when I was a staff photographer for the AP, I obviously did a lot of news as well as sports, but I got laid off from that when they did a worldwide layoff, and I was one of the ones that got laid off. And it was tough for a while. I mean, it was like, oh, crap, what do I do now? But that's when I started freelancing, and it worked out pretty well for me. And that's kind of when I morphed into just total sports,
Gotcha.
as opposed to trying to do everything.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough to get laid off, and a lot of people get laid off these days.
Definitely. Yep. The world of photography is constantly evolving. Do you try to keep up with that technology? Do you find yourself, at least studying or reviewing or reading material, or just kind of stay with what you have and just, see what's out there when it's out there, what's new?
Like equipment wise and
Yeah, equipment, anything that would help. And with cameras, sensors getting bigger and files getting bigger, it's like your computer all of a sudden is slower, that kind of stuff. Do you try to keep up with that kind of stuff?
I do and I don't. I mean, yes, I think you have to a point, but a lot of things, like you said, with the files getting so big and the motor drive so fast that I had to change my entire workflow because of the speed of the motor drives and the size of the files. You can't leave files on your computer you got to get them off your computer because, you got to get them on external hard drives because it just takes up too much room. And I've taken to, which I never was big about, tagging images in the camera now. And it's not so much that I'm tagging a specific image, I'm just tagging an area of images, kind of.
Right.
So that when I go through and look at my tag images, I can say, okay, yeah, I wanted to look through this sequence,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Unless I have a external editor who wants my images, then I'll be more specific. But for my own good, I'm just tagging something as kind of an area tag,
Right.
a sequence that I can
that
go
makes a lot of
look
sense.
at. Right. Yeah. So, because there's just before you could go through all your images. Now, with the motor drive so fast, it's like you don't have time to go, on when you're on deadline every minute of every day, there's no time to go through every image,
Right.
And you
That's
have
the
to
one
know.
thing.
But I think when we're shooting, when there's an image. Yeah. And a perfect example is a goal cam in hockey. Which I know you've done plenty of. When there's could be a chance for an image, and know that 99% of your game is not going to be a picture, but that one time you're like, yeah. In the second period, there was that one time where, and you go looking for that image,
Right.
But
and you hope your radio fired.
Yeah, you just open fired, right? Well, that's a whole nother story. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, remotes are like, every time I set up a remote, I'm like, if I get one good picture, I'm happy, And the NHL goal cam is a perfect example of that. If I can get one picture a game, and sure, there's times where you get a few pictures, but they're not good. They're not killer pictures. That I'm talking where the goalie's turned around. He's down in the crease. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, puck's right there in front of the camera.
And you're thinking to yourself, and you're looking up on the board, the Jumbotron for the replay, and you're like, yes, that might be something,
Right. Otherwise, I have 41 gig of images I'm downloading and flying through, and I keep 2 images.
Yeah, right.
It's like,
Exactly.
I totally get it, because I do, being with the team and the way the NHL has it now, I do the netcam every game. So it's just, it's amazing just how few you get that one shot. It just doesn't happen that often. And when something does happen, like you said, you look up at the replay and then you're like, okay, hopefully the radio fired. I know I triggered it, and let's just just pray.
Right. Just pray.
The worst part is when that's in the first period and you have to wait, till you're going to see your card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. You mentioned the layoff thing. My next question was going to be, what challenges have you faced as a photographer? How have you overcome them? And I guess that kind of relates to being laid off, then starting as a freelancer. And how was that transition period?
It was hard. I was really bummed out when I got laid off. It was a good gig with the AP, a steady paycheck, you knew what you were
Right.
making every week. Freelance is different. I guess I'm lucky. I was lucky in a sense that it came a little later in my career. I had established myself already, but it was far enough back that all these newspapers hadn't started laying off people and magazines laying off people and basically flooded the market with really good freelancers. I was kind of a little before that, so I could get my foot in the door on a lot of places before the numbers started increasing on that.
Right.
And a lot of good photographers have been laid off, let go, their papers have been shuttered, and they're out looking for work. And it's, it's sad kind of. You hate to see it go that way. Just thinking, I didn't finish one story earlier when my photo editor cursed me out for shooting basketball horizontally, right? Now you'd get cursed out if you shot it vertically.
Right, exactly.
It's like everything's online now. And that the newspaper thing made me think of that, is that, newspapers wanted thinner pictures, to run. And now with everything online, they want everything horizontal. And it's like, you try to make a horizontal out of a vertical picture. It's like, it's hard to do sometimes.
Oh, yeah, totally. That reminds me, we both had shot for USA Today Sports. Now imagine. There was a spring training game where I guess I sent some pictures, and one picture that was a nice play. I don't remember what the play was. I guess I cropped it a little too square. And then I got the phone call from, I'll just say Bob, saying, don't send square photos. And the next day, front page of the sports section, they ran it as a square. It was the greatest thing for me to call them back and say, "Did you see the paper today?" But that was always one of my fun ones.
And I do, I do give them squares occasionally, and I will give them a vertical occasionally. When there's just no other way to crop it, I'll do it. And if sometimes when I have to give them a square, I'll also give them a horizontal version of the same picture. That's one of the benefits of this digital age, is you can, you can just dump pictures on these people, and leave the decision up to somebody else.
And that's really a great point of sending both, because they'll see why you cropped it square. They'll see that maybe leaving it horizontal, there's a distraction on the side, and your eyes keep going to that spot. Where you crop it square, you're just looking at the peak moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I was cleaning out a closet, and behind an old filing cabinet, I found this black and white picture of a play at second base from 1987. It just brought back, we had dark rooms everywhere.
Yep.
We would travel with dark rooms. We would show up at an arena and try to figure out where we could make a dark room, a janitor's closet, a bathroom, and we'd set up a printer, and, we'd have to do all this stuff. And on top of that, we'd miss half the games because we were developing and printing pictures, and using an old typewriter to type the caption, which is on back. Just comes so far now that, in the old days, I think I'd get 2 pictures from a game, maybe 3 that you could transmit. Because it took 10 minutes to transmit each picture. They'd go on a drum and they'd go around in a circle, and now you can just dump endless amounts on them.
Yeah, I did an AFC Championship game, Chiefs at Arrowhead, and it was like, game time temp was like -3. It was just ridiculous. But the guy I was shooting with, he stayed at the hotel, and he had an issue with his heating element to, soup the film, and ended up processing it in the bathtub. And, it was the funniest thing, but we got some pictures out. I'll never forget that. But I mean, that's the thing. People are listening to us going, "What are you talking about? What do you mean film, drum scanner and this?" And when Nikon came out with that little slide scanner that you would just cut your negative and put in a slide placeholder, to scan to your computer, was like magic. I mean, all of a sudden we can get, 4 or 5 pictures out instead of 2 or 3.
And we wouldn't have to make prints anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
and I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Making a print was really an art back then, because using your hands to burn and dodge and stuff. And another thing that's taught me is what you can really do to a picture in the digital age. Because it's usually, if you could do it in a dark room, you can do it digitally. and we know what we could do in a dark room, which wasn't much, obviously. But that's often my guideline for how much I work on a picture in the digital age.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that bothers me, and you might remember this because we both did it at the Olympics, but when you're hardwired at a game and you know a play happened and you look back through your monitor, it's like with the social media age and digital age, everybody wants their picture right now, so quick. And then I'm looking at my monitor and I'm tagging a picture so it gets sent. But then I realize I missed another play because there was like a turnover and the puck went the other way. And it's like, but they needed the picture right away because the guy next to me is sending his. That still bothers me to this day because, like in baseball, if somebody hits a home run and our social media team would like it as soon as possible, I'll plug my phone into my camera and download it to my phone and send it to them. But then the next guy, they go back to back and the next guy hits a home run. So yeah, I might get him crossing the plate and some high fives, but I hate, even if it's just a brief second, one pitch, two pitches, if it's, a face off, I hate taking myself out of the game to get the images out, but that's today.
Yeah, that is today. And, something along those lines, one of my personal pet peeves is chimping. People that look at the back of their cameras when the game is going on.
Right.
You'll see in basketball, because you can see the photographers under the basket, a play will happen around the rim or something, a drive. And as soon as it ends, you can see people looking at the back of their camera. Well, the play's still going on. There could be a coach yelling. There's something still going on. It's not worth looking at missing a picture to look at your pictures. Now, transmitting the different thing.
No, I preach the same thing because you can look at a row, especially if it's one of the tournaments. There's two rows of photographers, and they're all chimping after a play. And I'm like, okay, there's going to be a timeout soon. You can look at it then. Because what if you missed it? What are you going to do? Nothing.
Yeah.
So then you missed the next shot, too, because you're sitting there looking to see if you got a picture. And if you didn't get it, you can't do anything about it now. So I totally agree. And that's where this whole, younger people that listen to this will probably be, talking to us like, listen to this dinosaur, bitching about this and that. But, we learned the hard way. I mean, we learned with manual focus lenses. It's just so different. I think that made us better photographers, the work we had to put into it, even the printing aspect. I mean, because you're seeing and creating and putting something out there that you're most likely proud of or happy to have, gotten the right moment. But so different now because you just spray and pray. You get a lot of these younger kids, 20, 30 frames a second, and they're shooting before the actual moment happened, thinking, well, it'll be in there somewhere because I'm just holding down the button. Right. And that always drives me nuts. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and the chimping, I mean, it's not worth missing anything to look at the back of your camera. I've told that to people. If you give them the picture 1 minute later, unless it's like the Stanley Cup Final or the World Series, it's okay.
Yes.
Don't be so stressed about getting it out that you're going to miss something else.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because one point, and I've had this in discussion before, is I might wait that 1 minute because I want to shoot the next batter or I want to stay in the play because things are still going on. But the other guy working on the same team as me that sends his right away, and I might have had the better angle back to the first base, third base thing, and then they use his right away when I know I have a better picture because of just the side I'm on, just the angle I have. And like the football, like you mentioned that, where somebody it's across the field, it's their photo. They're the ones going to have the better angle. But then this one gets used because they got it first and they just wanted to get it up. And then later I'm looking through stuff and they're not even using mine at all. I sent it a minute later than the other guy. And that still bothers me because these editors, especially some of these younger editors, really don't understand the game the way we do and don't realize that we're going to send the picture that we feel tells the story. And the other person might send a photo just because they shot that moment, even if it's the bad angle.
Right. No, and that comes on the editors actually a lot. Right. I'd actually rather be the late guy. I know it bothers you, and it does bother me. I mean, of course, we all want our pictures to get used, but if I have the better picture and takes me a minute longer to get it out, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
that's
that.
good. Yep,
And if
definitely.
they're not going to use it, I'm okay with that too. I've learned to accept that. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm trying to get a little more used to, is to just to learn to accept it. And then, hey, then I'll put it on social or something so people can see I got the nice picture.
Yeah.
So the business side of photography can be as important as artistic aspect of it. Do you find yourself, have you changed business approaches over the years? Do you just, because you get assignments and you go out and cover the sporting events, has anything affected you that way?
Not really, because I've always had plenty of clients. So I've never really had to market myself too much. I've had to make phone calls and stuff, but never like straight out marketing like social media or anything. I will say along those lines, having good people skills is part of our business.
Huge.
And photographers don't realize that. This is going to lead me to another point too. But photographers think, okay, I can take great pictures. That's all I need to do. No, you need people skills. You need to connect with people. You need to have contacts with people. It's more than just photography. Right. And I think some people don't understand that. They just want to be a photographer. I just want to take pictures. There's more to it than that. And that comes with the business too now. If I was starting out now, I would make sure I knew how to at least partially run a decent business, unless you're a staff photographer somewhere, but those positions are so few and far between. And I preach this to people, you got to have people skills. It's like another thing I always tell people, don't show up looking like a slob, okay? Right. We got a lot of slobs in our business who show up, and I'm not going to use any names, but they show up, they look like they're homeless, you know what I mean? Right. Or they look like they just rolled out of bed or something. Show up, look respectable, be sociable, talk to people with respect. That's all part of the business,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Look professional and act professional is what I say. It does make a world of difference. And I think that the easier it is to have rapport with everybody, from somebody that's high up in an organization to the janitor. You just need to treat everybody the same, and that's going to, help you in business. It's going to get you farther. If you're quiet, if you don't talk to people notice that, and it's like, they're not going to then engage with you, and they might not know more of what you're able to do photographically or who knows what. But being a people person and being polite and all that is just number one to me.
Yeah, it's part of the job. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. When I was working for SI, I was working with Damien on an assignment, and he had an assistant helping him, lugging cameras around and setting stuff up. And I was really polite to the guy. I was like, do you need any help? Or, even though I had my own things to worry about, I'm like, try to do it this way for him. I was trying to help him out. He was a young kid right out of school. Mm-hmm. That kid now gives me assignments. Okay, he rose through the ranks of editors, and now, I'm not going to mention a name or where he works, but I now get work from that kid. Right. And I do it because I was respectful to him.
You treated him
when
right.
He was a peon, you know what I mean? And not that an assistant is a peon, but you know what I mean.
No, I know. Completely.
Yeah. And that's always the example I give when I talk about, treat everyone the same. Like you say, treat the CEO the same as the janitor. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you've got to do that, because you never know who's going to help you out in the long run.
Oh, exactly. I totally agree. That's really, really huge. Are there any specific photographers or artists who have influenced you?
Not really. The SI guys, SI used to be the top of our business, the sports business. This day and age, I'm not sure what the top of the sports business is, So I looked up to a lot of those guys. I love to look at pictures. Mm-hmm. And earlier in my career, I would just scan for sports photos. And you know what? I'm the first to admit, if I saw something I like, I'm going to try to make that picture. Or I'm going to try to make it from a different angle, but I like the way this guy thought about that. And there's nothing wrong with imitating someone. If someone made a great picture and you can make it the next day, go ahead and then admit it. Say, I saw your picture and it was a great picture, Yep. And I just tried to duplicate it or shoot it from a little different angle or a little different light, or there's nothing wrong with that, there's always people that are better than you. There's always people that were in a better spot than you, and you have to understand that and respect it,
Definitely.
I mean, and I think and along those lines, another thing I think our business lacks is people complimenting other people on their pictures.
Right.
People are very tentative about saying, "Oh man, that was a great picture you shot last night. I saw it here, there." You almost never hear that from people because it's competitive.
Right. Yeah.
But that's part of being a good people person. If Scott made a great picture at the Stanley Cup Finals, I'm going to say, Scott, that was an awesome picture you made. The next time I see you,
But you didn't say that, so I guess I didn't make anything.
No, you made nothing but crap.
Hey, at least I got that one right.
Yeah, you got that one right.
You got that one right. Didn't screw that up. Tell you a real quick story about that, though, is because I was farthest away from the stairwell to get downstairs to get my cards in, I basically would, like 30 seconds left, would stand up to get ready to run up the stairs. So when the period ended, I could hopefully beat the traffic and at least start, moving because everybody else is coming up. And that's the actual winning goal our defenseman Pietrangelo scored while I was running up. And so I was able to turn and get celebration because one of the players jumped up in his arms, and that kind of told the story enough because I don't even remember the angle of the goal, but I mean, that might not have been the shot. So the Sully was the shot. And, but yeah, definitely brings back some memories of that. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's true. I look at that team picture you have behind you, and I shot a Stanley Cup final. Was it that one or was it? I don't remember, and I wasn't an NHL photographer or a team photographer. And they held us from getting to that picture while picture was happening.
Right.
Well, the only people that got it were the NHL and the team photographers. And they do that with the cup presentation too. I just don't understand it, okay? I love hockey, but they should be trying to promote their sport. They should. I have a picture of the 1988 Stanley Cup Final when the Oilers raised the cup, and it was the captain and the three assistant captains. We were all on a carpet like we do, okay, along the boards, and it was at center ice. They gave them the cup center ice, facing all the photographers, okay, and they raised the cup with joy and jubilation, and we all got it. It was right at all of us. And
I don't get that either.
I've never understood that. Never understood that.
Everybody's there to do a job. You're working for somebody because you're credentialed there. So it's like, my entity then gets the photo just like anybody else. And it's not going to keep the NHL or the teams from like making money or anything. It's, not that issue. I don't get that either. I've only experienced it once. But, it's still one of those things where sometimes I don't understand how the workings go. I actually was held back. I was in the tunnel. I was in our tunnel to the bench with the last minute. And an NHL person, even though I had all the proper credentials, walkie-talkie, earpiece, 2 NHL images, this guy still would not let me go out there until a certain time. And our guys had already taken the ice and thrown everything up in the air. The only good thing about it was one of the hugs I got on the bench with our head coach and a former player, one of the original players in the 1967 team. Everybody loved him. And to see the coach give him the big hug, I wouldn't have made that had I been out on the ice. So it ends up working out okay. But just why are you not? I'm with the team and you're not letting me out there. So sometimes it's just too many politics. It's just I'm in power right now. I'm controlling this area, and what I say goes, and that happens. Do you have any projects? Do you ever think, because you're covering all these sporting assignments, all these events, do you ever photographically think of some other projects that you wish you would either be involved in or create yourself or work on?
Once in a while I do. It's usually something odd, like mud football or, pond hockey tournaments or, it's something like that would interest me and I might pitch to somebody. But I've got so much work. I really don't go looking for that much, but those are the kind of things that I would go for. And I'll tell you, after doing this for so many years, I love shooting high school sports now, for the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald, whoever, I work for. But you know what? The emotion in the high school sports is so great. And the juby, the dejection, the action, you can go to an NBA game and they're so good they never lose the ball. There's never that floor scramble. You go to a high school game, they're diving all over the place on top of each other, because they're not as skilled. They lose the ball, and it makes for good pictures. So
that's interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point in my career, I just love doing the high school stuff.
I totally get it.
It sounds funny, but yeah.
So do you still do stuff for the Symphony?
I do. I shoot for the Boston Pops and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And on a pretty regular basis, actually, I came across this gig by accident, actually. The BSO changed their director of music to who they have now, who is Andres Nelsons. He's the conductor and in charge of all the music. When he first came on, before he started, he threw out the opening pitch at Fenway at a game. And I happened to be at that game. I shot the picture. Well, they called me and said, can we get a copy of that for our wall? And I said, okay, let me talk to the people. I'm sure it's not a problem. And I said, by the way, if you have any work, I'd be happy to help you out. And that led to this whole thing of me doing it, which I'm not a big classical music symphony type guy. But it's really nice. You and we live in arenas and stadiums, and it's just nice to go somewhere that's a little quieter. That's the atmosphere. When you're walking in the hallways, you're not have beer spilled on you. There's little old ladies that you have to be careful not to knock over, Right. And funny. It's kind of a nice change of pace for me, and I enjoy doing it. It's been a good gig for me,
Good. That's
so
nice.
That's worked out well.
What kind of advice do you have for someone just starting? I know one of the things, I'll let you answer here in a second, but I tell people, you want to get into sports photography, start at the athletic association in your neighborhood or around you. Do the team and individual stuff. Parents love pictures of their kids. If there's a softball tournament, a baseball tournament, whatever, if you can meet somebody that's in charge of it and shoot that, you're going to make money that way, and it's going to help you improve your work. I get messages all the time. Do you need a shadow? I want to get into sports. I want to be a team photographer. It's not like every day you just see team photographer jobs. It just doesn't happen that way. Right. And like you say, with newspapers changing and everything. So what kind of advice do you give to young photographers?
Well, I think what you said there is key, because I remember going to Sports Illustrated with a portfolio to try to get work from them. And Steve Fine was the director of photography. And I'm like, I knew of him and about him. And he was a tough guy. And I didn't want to go too soon, because if I went too soon when I wasn't ready, I would probably never get another crack at it. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at is, you got to kind of get the hang of it before you start poking your head around for other opportunities, Right. And so I think that's good advice. I also think if I was starting out today, I think that I would probably do video too.
Yes.
I would probably make sure I could do video as well as stills,
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a very good point. And a lot of our newspaper photographers locally here with one paper we have do a lot of video, and they've learned to do, video. That's really important, especially this day and age.
Yeah, it is. And it's probably just a matter of time before the video is so good that stills will be able to be pulled from the video. Yeah. And, and that could put the leagues in more control of the images. I don't know how that's really going to affect the business, but I don't know if it's going to cut down on the number of still photographers that are allowed in, if it will all be video and stills will all be taken off video. I mean, I just think that video now is something that people should probably have in their back pocket too,
I totally agree.
Yeah. And I think that I would definitely have that in my repertoire as well,
But the money that rights holders pay, because this conversation does come up about, the video and then taking a still and using that. I think it's still far enough away, because rights holders pay so much to broadcast the game, that they don't want people down on the field shooting, minutes and minutes and minutes of video and then trusting they're going to pull just the still image to be used. And, as far as if you're talking about the local newspaper, local website, whatever it is, 3 different news stations, TV stations, if they're all doing video, they're usually allowed to do 30-second chunks, stuff like that, because the rights holders pay so much money. So I'm thinking those still photographers, those still jobs in the major sports will still be around for a while, because I think that's a big issue, that how are they going to control it? Shooting a lot of video during a game when you're not the rights holder. So who knows? Yep. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it either. I have a feeling it's going to lean that way in the long run. Who knows? The way these motor drives are these days, it's like you're practically shooting video as it is,
Yeah. People like videographers are shooting 24 frames a second. We're shooting 120, here and there. Yeah. Not to do that, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Social media and online platforms have become integral in our industry. How do you utilize these platforms to connect to a wider audience, just to show your work? What's your take on the social aspect for you?
For me, it's just at my point in my career, it's just basically to put some pictures out there. I can see it being different for somebody young. And the only advice I'd give, which is the same advice I give to people making websites, is do a tight edit. Make sure you don't put crap out there. Only put the very best out there, because people are going to look at it, and if they see pictures that are no good, they're going to, if they continually see it, they're going to stop looking at you, Right. And so make sure you're only putting your best out there, and that doesn't mean you post from every game, because every game does not produce a great picture.
Right.
Being a baseball team photographer, I mean, I can go down to Fenway Park for a week and not make a picture, And I'm talking about, obviously I make pictures, but I'm making a really killer picture.
Yeah, one that you want to show to the world like that, because it's going to live forever online. I totally agree, because there's times at our last homestand, I shot 3 out of the 5 games or something like that. And I didn't post anything on social from that homestand, because I just didn't feel like there was a picture worthy of sitting there and saying, people stop and look at this. What a great image kind of thing. If I don't have it, I don't have it. And there's nothing I can do about that. So just why post it? And then you have a lot of these younger photographers posting 20 pictures from a game because now on Instagram you can post 20 pictures. And it's like, what are you doing? I mean, you might have 2 pictures that I'm like, this is awesome. That's a great shot. And then I flip to the next one and like, okay, why? And the next one, and the next one. And I'm like, well, I'm not even thinking about your great picture I saw a minute ago now. I'm curious why you would post these. And so that great picture got lost in my mind.
Yeah. And it says something about the photographer that they're putting average pictures out there for the world to see, where they should really only be posting their best work, their absolute best. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people post from every game, and actually some newspapers make their photographers post from every game, and I understand that part of it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have to, man, you got to be careful what you put out there. It's the old, if you put crap out there, somebody's going to use it, It's got your name on it, so.
Right. Yeah, and our local paper does that, where the photographers put up the gallery afterwards, so they have to. So it's on the web, and it could be a 1-0 or 2-1 game with no action, and pictures do or whatever, and then they're supposed to put up 10, 15 photos in the gallery, and it's like, what are you thinking here? Is there anything that you can think of that we did not touch on, or anything that you wanted to talk about, any stories or anything?
Mainly when I give talks, it's mainly about advice for young kids, or advice for people starting, and I think we've covered a lot of it, actually. One thing, this will go back to Steve Fine, the director of photography at SI. He told me that he wanted to see my website, and he said, if it takes longer than 3 seconds to load, I'm not going to look at it.
Wow.
So I tell people that story. Editors are busy people.
Oh yeah.
And if you're waiting for a website to load, forget it. They're just not going to look at it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And don't put too many pictures in there, because they don't have time to look at a lot of pictures.
Right.
And so that's my advice about websites, and that came from Steve Fine.
That's awesome.
It's got to load quick, and there's got to be very few pictures because doesn't have time to look at a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and back in those days, I mean, an editor like that, and I'm sure some editors now, they'll know right away. They'll get the feel of what you can do. They can see things in your work right away. It could be 3 pictures, 4 pictures. I mean, I know you and I can look at stuff and see if somebody's got it. Somebody has the eye for it or the timing for sports.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell by, give me 10 pictures and I can tell whether you got it. And if I like the first 10, I'll look at another 10,
Right.
but probably not much more than that. I'll have a good feel for you after that, Yep.
Another
Another funny Steve Fine story, if we have time for it, is that my first assignment for Sports Illustrated, where I was on assignment for them, was in the 90s, and it was a college football game. It was Boston University playing their last football game because they were disbanding their football program. So it was their last game. It was at home. They were terrible. They'd been terrible for years. This is why they were getting rid of football. Okay, they were 0-11 or whatever. They're like, go there and tell the story.
Right.
So I go to the game and I running around shooting as many angles and different things as I can. They ended up winning the game. Their first win in like 3 years. Okay. So I have all this jubilation and everything. And so back then you'd put the film on an airplane and they'd get it in New York. They'd go through it. I would never call the editors and say, what do you think? What do you think? They don't have time for that. They don't want to get calls like that. So I just wait till the magazine came out. The magazine came out, and there was a drawing of something for the art of the story. There was no pictures of mine in the story. And I'm like, oh, crap. And he had said to me, when he gave me that assignment, he had said to me, can I swear? He said, if you fuck up, you will never work for me again. Okay, that's what he told me for my very first assignment, okay?
Yeah.
And then I had this happen, and then there's a drawing is the art in the thing. So anyway, I got a call from the college football editor saying, you did a really good job. The story didn't go your way, so don't worry, we'll find you another assignment, So
That's hilarious. That's
but
awesome.
that was funny, yeah.
Yeah,
that's great. That was a funny one. To see a drawing where your picture should have been it's tough.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've had those assignments where you go and you're expected to get a certain thing in the story, but the game doesn't go that way, and it's like nothing I can do about it. I'm happy. I pat myself on the back if I feel I made good use of my time, made some decent images. At least I did that. But if it doesn't go your way, can't do anything about it.
There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. It's another thing that a piece of advice I got from an SI guy was don't ever take an assignment you can't succeed at. In other words, if you're strictly an action guy and, natural light guy, don't take a portrait assignment that you're not sure you're going to be able to be good at. Just turn it down. And that was good advice. And I think everybody should think about that because everybody wants to just take everything they're given, but don't take something that you're not going to succeed at. Right. You have to be careful of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I actually did hear that recently in a conversation with somebody that this photographer, who's a great action photographer, said he wished he was better at portraits. It would have made him more well-rounded, but he never took portrait jobs because of it. And he didn't want to not do it as well as he knows these other portrait photographers could do. And then again, these portrait photographers, they're not going to go out and all of a sudden cover sporting events. So if you can be well-rounded, if you learn more, yes, but that's great advice. Don't take assignment if you don't think you can nail it.
Yep,
absolutely. It's out of your wheelhouse. Yep. Well, on that note, I really appreciate you taking the time. Hope you enjoyed our little conversation. We had some fun, and great to see you. And
great to see you, Scott. Great to see you. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you at another Stanley Cup final down the road.
There you go.